Is archive fashion really fashion, or is it just collecting? Now I know what you're thinking. It's both. Duh. But that doesn't make for a very entertaining video now, does it? I started thinking about this because I was watching a video that Owen Hyatt put out of basically saying he thinks he has the largest video game tee collection. And my first thought was, why? No shade on Owen. I think that I actually do think it's kind of cool, but like, he likes old survival horror games, and so do I. Huge Silent Hill fan, if you can't tell by the sound effects. But even to the point that like, because of him, I've thought about getting like an old Silent Hill tee or something like that. But I was thinking about it in the context of like, I have some black graphic tees, obviously. I think every guy probably has amassed some, but I don't find I wear them super often or super interchangeably. I have like a Dare one, I think I've worn on this channel before. I have like an Akira one, and then a couple grab bag of a couple other ones, and like, I'm good. Like, I don't need any more black graphic tees because I want to change up what I'm wearing day to day and, try something different. Someday I want to wear a button up. Some days I want to wear, like a sweatshirt, whatever. So I started to think about it in the context of like, what does this actually do for somebody's wardrobe? And I don't think Owen has that because it's a wardrobe thing. Like, I don't think he wants to wear a different black graphic video game tee every day of the week. I think he does it because it's a collection, right? And I know, no duh, but I'm going somewhere with this, I think. But before I go somewhere with this, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, especially if you like this kind of thing. Depending on what videos do better with subscriptions, I might, steer that way, whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to make stuff. So, rant over. So let me take a step back from Owen. I got this, just recently I got this Balenciaga crew neck from fall winter 2017. I think it's dope. And if you know me, you know I love the Balenciaga fall winter 17 collection. That's one of my favorite shows of all time. I don't really know why. To be honest with you, I think it was just that moment in time I was paying attention to. I suddenly got into like more luxury designer fashion because of it. It just hit me at the right time. I've said before, I've made a video about it. I really loved the Triple S when it came out. I was like, oh, there's a pair of my Triple S's right there, prominently featured. So over the years, I've kind of collected some pieces from fall winter 2017 that stood out to me at the time that I really wanted. Obviously the Triple S's, I have 2 pairs of the OG Italian made in Italy pairs. This now, and I have a pair of like the utility, actually I have 2 pairs of the utility pants that they showed that show. At the time when the show came out, I was like, oh man, I love that sneaker, but it's like $650. I can't do that. Now looking back at that seems positively quaint, especially because I think they're like $1,100 or something now, and they're made in China now. So take that as you will. But I hadn't quite crossed that threshold of like buying into luxury goods at the time. So to me, that was just beyond the pale. But now looking back at it, the Overton window has shifted. Now I'm able to look back and buy those pairs. So because I love the show so much, I'm every once in a while I'm looking out for stuff. And that's kind of how this came into my possession. I was, browsing Grails. I typed in Balenciaga 2017, saw it come up. I've seen this before, and it was at a good price, so I jumped on it. I really gotta stop browsing Grailed when I'm not intending to buy anything, because that's how these things happen. Grailed is a great way to spend time, but it turns out it's also a great way to spend money. So keep that in mind. And that was the other kind of way I was thinking about this, of like archive fashion versus collecting, right? So if you're not super initiated, I'm sure you are to some extent, but like archive fashion differs from fashion in the sense that a lot of people who are into it are more interested in the past, the archive of certain collections, designers, pieces, what have you. So that in its simplest terms, right? It's being into stuff from the past versus stuff from the present. Whether that's, following a certain designer or a certain show, like I'm talking about with Balenciaga 2017, or certain pieces. Like, so for example, like the Raf Simons Riot Bomber going for like $50,000 or something like that. Like that's this is kind of where like grails come into play, but grails can be present too. But a lot of the time it's stuff, there's a rarity element to it, obviously, because it's a show from the past. They're not making this thing anymore. Or there's like a quality thing to it. So like you could be into like archive Rick Owens because you think that the latest stuff doesn't match the quality. I just saw a post the other day that was like, don't bother with Rick leather from like the last 3 or 4 years. Might be a bit of hyperbole, but it was because I saw a pair that looked kind of plasticky. So in that way, fashion, being into fashion, you're more focused on what's now, what's trending, what the current designers are doing in the landscape, and wanting to buy stuff that's in the store right now. Personally, I'm into both. Someone made a comment on the channel that was like, is there any element of fashion you haven't dipped into? And I think the answer is kind of no. I think there are some people, like Owen is like an archivist, though he has a clothing brand, who are like into archive fashion. Like that's their thing. And there comes a lot of trappings with that. I think it's people who, I think they're looking for like good quality items that are looked after, cared for well. But they have a certain aesthetic to them, right? Usually a little bit more distressed, worn in. They obviously don't mind stuff that's like secondhand. They'll take stuff that's new, obviously, unworn, whatever. That makes it even more of a grail. But generally speaking, if you're going to play in that space, you don't mind something that's been worn a couple times. You just try and get it in the best condition you can. So looking at my own like spending habits and what I'm looking to get into, I saw this piece. I was like, oh, I've seen that go for a lot more than this. I remember it being sought after when it came out. So it's like, it's not a grail of mine, but it's certainly something I've listed, hearted a couple times across a couple of websites. And when I see it go for a good price, I'm going to jump on it. That started me down a thought process of like, I really should buy more from fall winter 2017. Keep an eye out for this stuff, watch it, see if I can grab it for a good price when it goes on discount, whatever. Now, where I think that kind of gets us into trouble is that when you're shopping for clothes, not all the time, but a lot of the time you're trying to find pieces that will fit in your wardrobe, right? Like, oh, I really need a new winter coat, or I could use more scarves in my wardrobe. This gets us back a little bit to the graphic video game tee discussion of like, you don't actually need any more of those in your wardrobe. Even if you want to be like the graphic tee guy and wear like a bunch of them, what are you going to wear, a different one every day of the year? You know what I mean? Like, you're probably good. You're probably maxing out at like 20. That's where your load of laundry is getting a little steep and you need to like start going back to the top of the pile. So it's not about getting pieces in your wardrobe, right? It's not about filling a gap that you have there. Now, that's not the only reason people buy into fashion, of course. I have way too many clothes. I have more clothes than I could ever need in my lifetime. And I'm sure if you're watching this stuff, you do too. And that's cool, man. We're in this together. But, if you're into fashion, right? You're watching the runway shows, you're checking out what's in stores, you want to buy new things that are interesting and exciting to you, that expand your wardrobe, expand what you can wear. Sure, I've got a couple of crew neck sweaters, but I don't have any that are mohair, or I don't have any that are light neutral or something like that. All mine are dark navies and black. I need to get some in this realm, even though I'd be just fine with the amount of sweaters that I have. Or there's something that comes out that's just really unique and cool. And you're like, man, I gotta have that thing. It's so cool. This leather jacket has like chain detail on the shoulder that I think is really sick, or something like that, right? So that's another way to get into it. And that's where we start to go into the archive of like, if there's a piece that is really unique or interesting that you missed out on. Again, some of the pieces from the fall winter 2017 of Balenciaga, I think they kind of capture that for me. The triple S, the made in Italy pairs. I want to get my hands on that. Even if it's not the newest, hottest thing, even if the season has passed, I still loved that item enough that it's become like a grail for me, right? So if you look at a lot of like archivists or fashion that archive people are into, we talked a little bit recently about like the Eddie Slimane, his Dior era is really like sought after right now. But he has a lot of unique pieces that are like archive fashion pieces, right? Like you might want to get a pair of like, the first season he came out with the Wyatt boots, they had a different zip on them, right? The zip was a little bit more curved and like diagonal towards the front. Those boots, I'd say, are like an archive piece versus just buying some Wyatts. I mean, they still make Wyatts, for God's sake. But if you were to get a pair of like 2015 Wyatts, like I have, like a plebe, they're just not as sought after. And it for obvious reasons, right? Like, I don't even know if it's so much that the design of that diagonal zip is so much better as it is, it's unique. It's more rare, therefore it's more sought after. I mean, it's basic, soup to nuts or whatever the expression is. Same thing for like the LO1s that he came out with in 2013, I think are more sought after just because they have a slimmer profile. It's not even about quality or anything like that, like I mentioned with like the Rick Owens pieces. So where I think this can get you into trouble is, again, you're not buying for your closet. You're just buying to collect sometimes. And that's fine. I should clarify, I'm not like looking down on archive fashion or like collectors or something. Like I said, I'm kind of in that boat with the Balenciaga stuff. Again, I've mentioned this before. Trying not to spend money on pieces right now. And that's why I gotta stop browsing grails late at night. But I saw another pair of made in Italy triple S's for, I will say, quite a good deal. And I never do this. I just impulse bought them. And I was like, immediately afterwards, I was like, man, why did I do that? Like, I never do that. And I started looking at the pictures a little bit more, and they weren't in the best condition. Like, they had a good bit of heel drag. And like, I was like, he doesn't mention the box. He's not going to send I don't really care about the box, but just like, it'd be nice to have it. So I was like, man. And I bought them because I do not need more triple S's in my life. Okay. I only have two. There's people who have way more than that. And I very rarely actually wear them, despite being one of my favorite sneakers of all time. They're too damn heavy. They are quite a statement. They're tough to drive in, tough to walk in. And every morning I go to put on an outfit, I'm like, do I really want to wear like 5 pound on each foot sneakers? I'm going to feel like Goku training with, weighted bands on his arms and legs and vest. What a good show. So I definitely don't need another pair. The only reason to get them is because I have like a mini collection and I want to expand it. And that's, when you're talking about luxury goods and stuff, it can be dangerous, right? You don't want to be just like spending money to spend money. Like part of what I say to people when they have their expensive hobbies or whatever is, at least I can wear my shoes, right? At least I can wear this jacket. And I think there is something to buying designer pieces and archive pieces, which is you can resell this stuff. Like, there's something to be said for buying like a nice piece, whatever, good materials, but it's not like a huge name, versus buying something that's like a Dior or a Louis Vuitton. Like, you can turn that around pretty good and get your money's worth out of it and buy back in. That's how a lot of these guys who have like huge closets operate. I just don't sell anything because I'm a hoarder. And I have bad life management skills, I guess. No, I'm just afraid that I will regret selling something. I've sold some pieces before that I'm like, man, I'm sure I'll get there someday. I will let something go if it's not like perfect for me. It doesn't fit super well, whatever. So that being said, like I touched on it there briefly, but like I have a theory that everyone has at least one thing that they spend too much money on. Whether it's a hobby or a collection or whatever, right? Like I have a friend who's into gin and he just buys tons of gin, right? Different gins from around the world, whatever. But that's his thing, right? I have another friend who's into Funko Pops, and he told me once that he'd spend like $5,000 on Funko Pops. And boy, did that make me feel better about what I've spent on Rick Owens through my life. Because again, at least I can wear it. Again, no shade on Funko Pop owners. I just, whatever. So what is the difference? I do think to some extent archive fashion is collecting. It's collecting that you can wear. And I guess, if you look at like, if you're into fashion, right, there is that like current angle to it. There's a Instagram account I follow that I'm going to try and remember his name off of the dome. I think it's Sosalden. If I'm wrong, I'm going to put something on screen and you can all laugh at me in the comments. But he one of his shticks is he just like interviews people and he asks them, what's the difference between fashion and style? And in that way, I've always thought like style is your general vibe. Fashion is a part of it, but you kind of, how you style items, how you wear things. It doesn't have to be expensive pieces. It can be, stuff that you bought from Amazon or whatever, but if you, or the thrift, but if you wear it with confidence, you wear it well, you have style, right? Fashion is more on that other side of things where it's like, oh, I'm into luxury pieces. I'm into the fashion industry. I'm watching runway shows and staying up to date on what designers are doing what, and I'm buying the latest pieces to stay on trend. Style doesn't have to be trendy, I don't think. That's where personal style comes into play. So archive fashion is not concerned with what's in the same way with regular fashion, right? It's not trendy necessarily. It's not trying to buy the latest and greatest or what's moving the needle forward in fashion right now. It's really focusing back on the cultural context of what a piece means when it came out, right? Like, again, to me, it's not like super emotional, but this means something to me because I'm like, I remember being really into that show. So I want to own a piece of that, right? In the same way, you could have bought this right when it came out and you'd be more like fashionable and on trend. Not to say this is like unfashionable, right? But like, I buy a lot of like Saint Laurent, Eddie Slimane stuff, and I don't, that's a lot of like skinny jeans and stuff and flowy silk shirts. And when I wear those, people might think like, oh man, he's out of date. And maybe to some extent, but I like that aesthetic. And I like the Saint Laurent years when Eddie was doing his thing there. So like, I'm going to wear those pieces. I don't care so much if the, you know, Moto zipper jeans are in right now. I've talked about this a bit before of like, you know, wearing stuff that's like played out, like the heart shoes that I have. I like them. So I'm going to wear them. I don't, you know, that again brings up in this conversation of personal style, right? If you have personal style, it doesn't matter so much what's on trend. It's you like it and you're doing your thing. I guess that's my only thing is like the sort of like cautionary tale of like, maybe just know what you're buying into so you don't just buy for the sake of buying. Try to take into account like, does this fill a spot in my wardrobe? The silver lining on that Triple S story I told is like, I actually asked the guy for a return, and I said, before he'd even sent it out, and I was like, man, you know, I bought this by mistake or whatever. And he, you know, actually gave my money back and relisted the item. So that was cool. Didn't have to do that, especially just because of my like buyer's remorse. But I think it was like a teachable moment for me of like, no, chill out, wait, see if you really want this thing. You know, a lot of people have like a 2-week buy rule. I try and kind of follow along with that because I find most of the time like stuff fizzles out for me after a week even. I'm like, man, I don't really need that right now. But again, if you're into the collection aspect of it, then go nuts, man. Like collect. Again, I do still plan to buy more pieces from 2017, but I need to weigh that against like what I actually want to do with my wardrobe and where I want to go with it. Because there's only so many dollars to be spent on clothes, right? We got groceries to pay for. We got to get those gains, right? Chicken ain't cheap right now. And I want to make sure that I'm being very mindful about what I buy, like it's strategic in a way. So all this is to be said, I think archive fashion versus regular fashion, I think you can dabble in it, but just be intentional. And if you can, try and buy those pieces that are not only going to fill that niche of like what you want to collect, but also flesh out your wardrobe a little bit. So like rather than me buying another pair of Triple S's, maybe I will get one of the ponchos that they have. I actually don't own like a poncho. I have like one raincoat that's, I don't even know where it is, but it's a cool piece. It's very of the season and I don't really have something like that in my wardrobe. So, but again, if you want to just collect, you do you and buy all the video game tees you can. And if you have a cool Silent Hill one, send it my way maybe. But that's just my thoughts for today. Let me know how incoherent it was. Which side do you fall on? Are you more of the archive fashion type, buying the grails, or do you like to stay very current and buy the latest pieces? I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a lot more expensive to do this. So if you can, if you got it going on like that, more power to you. But do subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I sure appreciate it. And leave a like and leave a comment, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you guys.